In the Huddle was created to give student athletes, parents, and coaches an inside look at the journey through US college sport and all that comes with it. The demands, the experiences, the excitement, and the opportunities available to our student athletes from around the world. Study and Play USA facilitates a comprehensive, customised approach for student athletes and families for their whole journey, from their high school preparation years right through to US college graduation. Welcome to this episode of In the Huddle. For the next few moments, we're going to talk about transition. In other episodes, we've heard from some of our US college graduates and their transition out of high school and into college, and then from college out into the working world. So for those who like to plan ahead for their future, this episode is a must listen. We're joined in this episode by Alex Opacic, himself a former college student athlete who is so passionate about this transition beyond college that he started a business called Athlete to Business. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate you having me on board. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty cool topic, and I think it's something that we don't probably talk about enough, and probably not enough people know enough about. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your insight. But maybe we might start by, I had a good research of your website, Athlete to Business website. Can you tell us about your company and what's your mission?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start with the mission, and then I'll tell you a bit about the company. But the mission is, or its kind of purpose, but essentially is I want to help athletes find their purpose post sport. That's what the business is about, and we do that through career upskilling and education, and then ultimately job placement. So the core function of the business is placing former elite athletes, so retired elite athletes, or those who are elite athletes who have scope to work part-time or full-time, like you'll find some Olympians do. And we place them within corporate jobs, within companies who value the athlete's unique skills and experiences, and within companies who have an athlete-friendly culture as well. So just don't want to. I can go all day about what an athlete-friendly culture looks like. But one of the biggest things for me is, instead of having a manager, to have a coach. That's one of the big areas I found I didn't like and liked when I transitioned into the corporate space. When I had a manager, it just wasn't the best fit. But when I had a coach, that's when I felt at home. Like you do in sport. Even in sport, you'll have some. I had some coaches who were more rulers, or this is how it is, as opposed to coaches, mentoring you and coaching you properly. So that's one of the things I look for in placing athletes in an environment where they can learn, grow, be themselves, and be the best version they can be in the working world.
Well, that's good. It's a pretty good summary, I think. I like the word, a coach culture. I like the concept of that. I think that's really important because, as you know, we are wired a little bit differently as athletes. Yes. But it looks like you filled a gap in the market really for something like this. It's so you're obviously working with professional athletes transitioning out of their sports careers into the next phase of their lives as well, but also working with US college graduates, as you just said, as they emerge from an awesome 4-year experience. They're returning home and ready to start that the next chapter. But I guess like no matter what path athletes take, whether they want to go pro or want to go to college or go pro via college, I mean, there's going to be a day when they need to transition into a different world of employment in most cases. If we focus on professional athletes first, Alex, if we just focus on the pros, what are some of the challenges that you find that they're facing when they finish their sporting careers?
So the two levels of challenges, and there's the emotional and psychological side, and then the other is technical. But I'll touch on the technical in terms of the challenges of transitioning into some sort of career next. And the big, especially now in this COVID world, the biggest challenge I've found with athletes is lack of relevant industry experience. And it's how do you get experience without getting a chance somewhere? It's one of those things. And I completely resonate with that. It's a good question, and it's unfortunate the way that employers are thinking right now, because there's an abundance of talent out in the market. A lot of redundancies, people being let go. It's very hard, especially for a student graduate, a graduate student athlete, to come into the corporate space right now. Most companies are looking for someone with at least 1 or 2 years relevant experience within the industry, right? So that's one challenge, and there's ways that you can tackle that, and we can go into it. And then the other challenge is just like uncertainty. But a lot of people go through this: is what do I want to do next? How do I go about it? What's especially most young people, they want to work within something that they're highly passionate about straight away, straight out of college. And it takes time, it takes patience. Um, it took me 10 years to find something that I'm passionate about post sport, and I had no patience, and got there eventually. But so it's yeah, those are the things. It's the emotional and psychological side of things, or the mental side of things, is uncertainty, unfulfillment. What do I do next? You know, what's my skill set? And then the other one is the technicality side of things, is just lack of experience. So those are the challenges I'm seeing in the market.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think, like, from a pro point of view, like, um, we read about it all the time with some of probably our better known athletes who've done very well at the Olympic level or professional level, and they come out of something where they get a fairly, they're getting quite a bit of adulation from the public, and there's the adrenaline rush of competing, and sometimes in front of big crowds and things like that. I'd imagine stepping out of that and then going into a corporate place where that life is over and this is a
Yeah,
new life is big. And then I guess in some cases you've got that sport is all they know. They might have been a child prodigy and really never don't have any formal qualification and things like that for some of the pros. And I suppose I guess that'd be a challenge from a pro side of things, right?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a big challenge from a pro side of things. Is well, you touched on it, and I'll go back to saying earlier, I look for companies with an athlete friendly culture, and one of the other aspects is that adrenaline rush from sport. I find most athletes, I did as well, that you miss that adrenaline rush from sport, and I try and find company cultures where you get a glimpse of that adrenaline rush, or it's never going to be replicated to the same way, because you're not going to sit in front of a computer with thousands of people cheering you on, great typing, you know,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
great,
yeah,
great
yeah.
speech. You can certainly get it from presentations and maybe keynote speeches you might give here and there. That's a bit of an adrenaline rush. I find most athletes trend, and the core type of roles that I place athletes in is sales and business development. I find most athletes find that adrenaline rush within a sales type of environment. Um,
Yeah.
or an entrepreneurial type of environment as well. That I certainly found that adrenaline rush there as well. But yeah, especially the professionals, and you have to give your 100% energy and focus on your sport. Otherwise, you don't become a professional athlete. It's gonna be hard for you to compete. Do you know what I mean? So you got to give all your energy into it. But there are certain things that I speak to athletes about who are in that spot. You just have to find a way to do something else, and where you can and upskill yourself as much as possible.
Yeah, no, that's a key point. I think basically what you really said there was like, um, you know, athletes are competitive by nature, so getting a competitive environment as well, right? So sales and in a sense, it is a competition in a way,
Yeah.
sales within a company. And
Hmm.
I always remember, again, I've came straight out of college and I worked for a publications firm in Oklahoma City, and that was my first job out of college, and hopelessly unprepared for that job, but they saw something in me. I guess it might have been the athlete thing, because the interview sure wasn't that great, but got the job. And my very first sales meeting, very very blokey, male dominated sort of company, sales driven. And I remember my first week I made $400 worth of sales, and I've got guys that are high flyers are getting $45,000 worth of sales and putting it all up on the board. And I'll never forget when I announced what I sold that week. Standing ovation. The owner and his wife came out with a cake with a big Aussie flag on it, and
Yeah.
classic American, but
Yeah.
classically American, right? Really making me
Yeah.
feel really good. And I knew that I had a
Yeah.
pretty average week, to be honest. But I sort of loved that, and
Yeah.
then I said, right. And then I could see everyone else's numbers, and then the competitive side of me said, okay, I can do better than this next week. I'm going to nail this, and so
Yeah.
then and again the that was the best company I could possibly have transitioned into, because it was just there's so many people who wanted to help me, and then there was so many people to compete with, and then there was a few bonuses and trips to the Bahamas and things like that if we could reach
Yeah.
certain targets. So that just appealed to the athlete straight away.
Absolutely. That's a great example of an athlete-friendly culture right there.
Yeah.
100%. And that's the type of companies I try and partner with as much as I can.
Yeah, it was a hard one to leave. I eventually came back to Australia. That was fun. So no, that when you mentioned that culture, that reminded me of that. So I thought I'd share that with you. But
Yeah.
mate, if we just sort of go back out of the pro thing and then probably focus more on the student athletes now, transition. But mate, talk about yourself for a moment.
Mm.
I sort of mentioned at the top you are a student athlete, but can you just tell us quickly about your college experience? And you're a basketballer, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I started playing really elite level at the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra. I was there for a year, and then after that, I got a scholarship to Furman University. It's a small D1 school in South Carolina. And yeah, I think 6 months or so after the AIS. It was August. I went and no, actually, I went in July. I did summer school, and yeah, started my 4 year stint in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. But initially, it was a bit of a tough transition, getting used to the culture, mate. But it was quickly, it took me a couple of months or so to get used to it, and I absolutely loved it. It was probably one of the best 4 years of my life, as I'm sure you know, and most student athletes know. It's amazing over there. I
Yeah.
recommend it to anyone. I got two little daughters now, and they're 2.5 and a 7 month old. I'm already having plans for them to go to college in the US.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I highly recommend it for anyone. It was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, mate. And can you tell us first, what did you end up studying,
Yeah.
and how was that transition when you graduated? Did you stay over there and work? Did you do some internships along the way? Or what was, yeah? How did
Yeah.
the academic side of things fall into place?
Well, if I'm honest, I'll probably say I was a little bit irresponsible. I went there purely from that athlete mindset. You're a student athlete, but I ignorantly called myself, and as most athletes do, is an athlete student. So I studied communication. Just kind of fell into it. I battled around a variety of different things to try and study, but I just found I couldn't focus, and I found it too hard. And I kind of, not that communications is easy, but I think it just fit my personality the most, and that's what I ended up studying, which was a pretty very fun and interesting degree. I enjoyed it, and I probably didn't apply myself as much as I'd like to or should have in studies. I regret that a little bit, but I still, you kind of don't know. Subconsciously, I learned so much and engraved. My communication skills went up tenfold. Just my general confidence went up tenfold. And you don't know at the time when you're going through this. Like, I came out of college thinking, I don't know if I learned anything. I don't know, but 4 or 5 years later, I learned a lot. Like, even now, to this day, geez, I learned so much in college, and I would, if I had to do it again, I would have liked to be more aware of what I'm learning and what was coming into me subconsciously. I would have liked to be aware of it more consciously, if that makes sense. I might be elaborating here, but
Yeah.
that's as best as I
No,
could
not at
describe
all.
it. Yeah, yeah.
No.
Yeah, so that's did a communication degree, and basketball was a massive focus. I had dreams of playing professionally, and pretty much a couple of months after graduating, I got a professional gig to play basketball in Europe. So I didn't stay in the US. I was trying, I had a signed with an agent, and I was trying to get a professional contract as soon as possible. And I did. I ended up going to Greece, and then that's where my professional career started straight away. So I went from, I remember graduating, going through the that whole graduation parties and all that stuff, and then flying home to Sydney for a few weeks, and then going straight to Greece. So it's all kind of happened quick.
Yeah, it was. I imagine that's talk about transition, right? That's a pretty swift one.
Yeah,
But yeah, look, you weren't babbling there at all. It's very much resonate with your your experience
yeah,
as well. Yeah. Yeah, I think the only regret I have in college is I wish I knew what I knew now, like in terms of starting it again and
yeah.
having a different
Same.
approach to study and things like that, right? And probably start planning my future a little bit in college, which I want to talk to you about shortly as well, in terms of what our current kids can be doing over there to prepare. But I'll come back to that. But um, yeah, so yeah, that's an interesting perspective. So
Yeah,
with your, and I suppose all of that experience is a big driver for what you've started, right? Athlete to business, your personal experience.
yeah, exactly. And that's how the whole idea behind the business started. So I alluded to my lack of non-basketball awareness was horrible. All my energy and focus was on basketball and nothing else. So then I went and played professionally straight away, which I thought was awesome and great. And looking back on it, probably wasn't. Um, and 2 years into my professional career in Europe, I hurt my knee and had to get knee surgery. And long story short, I had 3 knee surgeries and ended up finishing my career. So it all kind of came to a halt pretty quickly. In between some of the knee surgeries there as well, I played semi-professionally in Australia in Seabull, which was good. We won the championship in 2012. I always like to throw that in.
Yeah, well
But
done.
yeah, yeah. But I wasn't the same player as I used to be. So that transition from professional basketball player to kind of the corporate world or my next stage of life was really poor for me, really, really bad. Like I was just absolutely clueless about anything else outside of basketball because I just never and not just the technicalities side of things, but you know how it is as an athlete, you're chasing a dream, you have a purpose in the morning, you wake up, you go to training, you're going to try and win games, you're going to try and win championships, you want to be the best that you can be. So that application as a human being is a great feeling. Once basketball stopped, I had no feeling like that. I was like, what am I striving towards now? What's my purpose? What's my dream? What am I chasing? It was nothing. So that I struggled with that feeling for about a couple of years, to be honest. I just had no idea, and it was a massive mental struggle for me, um, until I landed on my feet in a small town called Albury Wodonga. You probably heard of it, where I
Have
started. Yeah, where I played Siebel, and I just said to myself, I'm just gonna have to apply myself into something else outside of basketball somehow. And I fell into sales and just started transferring all those high performing habits from sport into sales. And then that's really where my kind of entrepreneurial journey started, dreaming for something else, for a bigger purpose. That's through it where it all started. But it took me some time to kind of figure out what's next and where do I go. So the reason behind athlete to business is I noticed the correlation with high performance in sales and former athletes. So that's the one side of things. But I also noticed that a lot of other athletes struggle with that transition piece. So I want to educate and upskill and train athletes on how to best transition, to transition better than I did, essentially. So that's how the business started.
fantastic. Yeah, thanks for sharing all your story because it's I think there's so many people that potentially listening, whether they're former athletes, former student athletes, or current, probably identify with that. But I think just listening to you and then thinking about obviously just resonating with my own situation, I think these days, because we're meeting with a lot of families that are thinking about sending their sons and daughters over to America, and one of the main questions that comes up is employability beyond college, and it's an important question. And I think it's a sign of the times. I think think we seem to be a little more planned and organised these days in terms of, I had no plan when I went to college. I just wanted to get the best scholarship I could at the best program where I can get the best tennis for me.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you for basketball, right? But
Yeah.
I think now if I could create, and I say this to every family we meet, if we could create the perfect pathway for 4 years or perfect 4 years, okay, yes, we need the sporting fit. That's crucial, right? Most families will need a scholarship that's handy and within their budget. Um, Most people too now are academically probably a little bit more organised than perhaps you and I were when we went to
Yeah.
college. I think schools do a little bit of a better job at that these days, maybe. But it's also the other thing I tell them is it's your opportunity to network when you're in America and start planning for your future. So use those 4 years to plan for the next phase. Don't wait until you finish and then say next what. So what next? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think I think despite the challenges that these student athletes face that we've sort of talked about, we see it a lot with our student athletes. They have when we talk about employability, they do have a lot of traits that separate them sometimes from non-athletes, and that's no
Yeah.
disrespect to non-athletes, obviously.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
but we see through our work, mate, that yeah, they got a point of difference both in the US post graduation if they want to work and they've got that opportunity, or back in their home country. And just looking at your website, Alex, I noticed you've got a page devoted there to business owners and employers, sorry, to demonstrate why former athletes are so employable. And if we look at some of that, I've just written down some of these, like highly motivated, highly focused, competitive. We've talked about that. Exceptionally disciplined. I really like that one because you have to be, and
Yeah.
resilient, driven, coachable is a huge one, I think, these days too. So that's just a few of them. But can you talk through some of these and what you see in your daily operations there, and how those traits translate to opportunities for employment?
Yeah. So yeah, I could go on all day about this. Obviously, a passionate topic of mine as well. But first of all, student athletes are highly employable, um, especially in the US. There's a lot of businesses who just look for student athletes, and it's becoming more prevalent here in Australia now as well. So a few reasons, and they know this in the US, but it's becoming more known in Australia. A student athlete in the US is essentially a professional athlete. Like you know that you train like a professional athlete, and you're competing at such a high level against some of the best players or athletes or competitors in the world of your age. Everybody is trying to go to the US to be a student athlete. Make no mistake about it. So you're competing at a very, very, very high level in sport, like a professional athlete. Yet you're also in a very high pressure situation academically as well. So there's only 24 hours in the day, or I don't know, 14 hours in the day. The rest you got to sleep, hopefully. So how do you fit all that in a day? And the biggest thing is you have to be highly disciplined. So that's one of the biggest traits of student athletes. The other one is, and I'm going to focus here specifically in Australia for a second, and I know it's in the US as well, but the most in demand skill that I'm seeing from employers right now in the market is emotional intelligence, right? So communication skills and emotional intelligence, that's a big one. And it's hard to teach emotional intelligence. I think it comes with life experience, and you'll be surprised. I mean, maybe you're not surprised, but some people might be surprised how many employers go to me and say, "Hey, Alex, look, yeah, it sounds great. I want to employ an athlete or someone who's this one, etc., etc., etc. But in general, I want someone who's maybe traveled around the world, someone who's got some life experience about them, someone who's had to struggle for certain things, and then I'll describe to an employer of what a student athlete looks like and what they do, and mate, absolutely love. Yet find someone like that for me. So I'm you probably know this, and you might not, but no, it's just how it is. The Australian culture is obviously not as big as the US in terms of that student athlete side of things, and there's a lot of employers in Australia who just have no idea of what a student athlete does or what a student athlete is. Rightfully so, fair enough. It's just not the type of culture that we have here. So I'm trying to raise
Yeah,
awareness of that more and more. But I find those who do know what a student athlete is a no-brainer, highly employable, highly employable.
yeah.
It's you're a superhuman. I think a student athlete, superhuman. So yeah, there's so many so employable because of those reasons.
And I'm gonna now call student athletes from now on superhumans, and they're gonna love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely, yeah,
It is. It's a huge. That's what it's very very hard for us to get that across sometimes to families in Australia that are coming out of the Australian culture, as you said, probably not aware of the American attitude or culture or status that a student athlete may have. But what we try and tell people is that your status is elevated once you become a student athlete, and
big
when
time.
you graduate, it's a heck of achievement, heck of an achievement. And again, in Australia, we get bogged down a little bit on, oh, I really got to get the right course. It's got to be exactly what I want. I don't know what it is. And whereas you get to America, as you know, you can mix and match a little bit. You can experiment with
Hmm.
courses, and eventually, but very bluntly, I actually think the actual degree that you get is less important
Yeah,
than the
the
experience itself.
life.
Um,
Yeah, massively
so
agree. Yeah,
it's a huge one, and I think when a student athlete or superhuman comes home from the US college experience, I think the number one asset is just that, a US college experience, and
yeah,
it's there's nothing wrong with studying in your home country, as we know,
yeah,
but there's something to be said for the benefits of living away from home and the independence, maturity, and a different perspective. I think that's
yeah,
we call them pile toppers. Your resume is probably you're going to get into a short list. Okay, employer is reading through resumes and probably sees the same sort of high schools and universities and a little bit of the sameness to the resume.
yeah,
Oh, went to Furman University. Okay, 4 years scholarship. Okay, got a degree. Okay, I need to interview this guy. I think I need to talk to him or talk to her
yeah,
because I think they're going to have a unique perspective, a worldly perspective, perhaps that others may not. So that's my
yeah.
take as
Amanda,
well.
you'll be surprised how many interviews I got that I was way under qualified for. As in, I just wasn't qualified for it at all with companies purely because they saw Furman University on my resume. Um, it's just a quick Google search these days, and you can find out what the school does, regardless of just that experience. And there was a lot of interviews that I just wasn't prepared for that I went to. You know, probably 20k higher salaries to what I was worth as well, 10 to 20k. I remember I actually ended up getting a job. I remember for a business. And I'll just be blunt. This is 10 years ago, and my starting salary was 80k. There's no chance that's an entry level role even today. No chance. And I was fired within 2 months because I had no idea what I was doing. But it just goes to say that that's why I've started this business. And a lot of people are smarter than I am that are coming out. But why I started this business is to kind of educate student athletes on how to use that experience to gain better employment, to get a competitive advantage, not just to gain employment, but to get a competitive advantage in the workforce. You know, you
Yeah.
I ended up using that student athlete story throughout my sales cycle, and I still do. Obviously, it's a part of the business story. And as you said, people just find it interesting. People want to be surrounded by interesting people, not sameness. Sameness is boring. Different is interesting. That's one of the biggest assets that you can gain by being a student athlete.
Yeah, it's just interesting listening to you and your, the interview. Obviously, you got the job, but then struggled a little bit with the actual job because of lack of experience and things like that. But
And
but I
mentally,
think it's
mentally, yeah,
yeah, mentally not ready for that. So I think really what I just picked up from what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is take the US college experience. No one can take that from you. That's a very unique thing. That's an asset on your resume. But add preparation to that, and
yes,
the world's your oyster a little bit, right? So I
100%.
think that's what I've picked up from what you just said. So I mean, just on that note, Alex. Obviously, we got a lot of listeners, more and more with each episode that passes, which is great. But we got some parents and athletes out there, parents of athletes out there. Maybe they're about to embark on a US college journey, or you might have some student athletes themselves listening to this in their dorm rooms in the US. How do you help? Let's just give you a scenario. There's a girl, soccer player sitting in America right now listening to this, and uh, 1 year in or second year of college. How if you were to get in touch with her, for example, or she was to get in touch with you, how do you help that athlete right now start to prepare for life out of college?
Yeah, it obviously it's each individual case, and in depending on if that person has some idea of what they want to do, um, even if they don't, this would apply as well. But the biggest thing I would say, so I'm just going to talk around the technicalities and actual actionable tips outside of there's a program that I've designed which I call Another Plan A, which so that's why I would have to go in depending on the person and go a completely different way. But long story short, Another Plan A essentially helps athletes find another passion or another purpose that they're as passionate about as their sport. So not a plan B. I had plan B, and the communication degree was my plan B. I wanted to work in PR. I don't know why PR sounded interesting to me. I'm like, yeah, I want to work in public relations. That's where I want to work after basketball. That's my plan B, right? Never eventuated because it's a plan B. So I always tell athletes, you got to find something that you're as passionate about as your sport right now. So speak to your professors. Just talk about the real world. Connect with, as a student athlete, you have access to sponsors and corporates and business professionals who are sponsoring your scholarship, right? And you probably have all these networking events all the time, probably digitally now. Just ask them questions. Ask them, hey, give me some advice on how to best transition into the corporate space. What do you think I would fit for? Or what should I do? So that's one way. One thing, if you're kind of unsure, speak to people who have been there, done that. I will go as far. The best thing that I've done for my business is find a mentor. So someone who has been to where I want to be. So long story short, is a 40 years CEO in the recruitment space. I want to be that. So I went and found this guy, and now he's my mentor. So find somebody, and most likely, if you're a student athlete, it's going to be somebody within your closed circles, within the city that you're in, who's a successful business person who's sponsoring your program. So speak to those people. Just speak to them. Find out. Be open and be vulnerable. Like be vulnerable as much as you can. Man, the best thing I've done is just started being vulnerable with my business and about my personal stories and struggles and failures, and it's gotten so much attention. And it's where I generate leads from a business point of view. But if I'm going to be a bit more technical on that, start using LinkedIn. LinkedIn is get off Instagram and get off Facebook as much as you can. Just get off it. Minimize on how you use it. Minimize your time. I think the amount of time that young people use Instagram these days, switch that around to LinkedIn. Spend all that time on LinkedIn and network with industry professionals, work on your profile, start a blog. Just start a blog about something that you're interested in. And when you graduate, that's how you battle that experience thing, right? So you come on a job interview, great, you're a student athlete, you've done this, but you just don't have enough experience as a PR agent, in public relations and whatnot. Well, actually, check out my blog, right? Like that's so powerful. That's so powerful. Even a blog or a vlog as well. Just get active on LinkedIn, and I do a variety of LinkedIn courses and help athletes. But it's nothing a quick Google search can help you out. How to best maximize my LinkedIn profile. That's the technical tips. So I don't want to say a lot here. There's a variety of ways, but if I could the best thing that you can do right now is maximize your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, and also I love what you said about the networking. And it's just, again, very, very hard to explain to people that haven't been to America, certainly not as a student athlete, is that Americans love giving opportunities. It's the land of opportunity, as they say. And they love giving opportunities to student athletes. As you say, that they're intrigued by student athletes. 99% of Americans have never been a student athlete.
Yep. Yep.
So you're in a fairly unique situation to be getting these opportunities, and obviously being Australian or being international makes you stand out from the crowd, and then you get alumni, as you just mentioned, will come and plug you in, and say, hey,
Yeah.
what are you doing this summer? Well, I'm going back to Australia. Hey, no, you're not. I've got an
Get it.
internship here for you at
Yeah.
Silicon Valley.
Ah,
Take it.
mate. Boom. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, the two words say yes. They're the two words I say to kids
Yeah.
when you get any option of opportunities. Just take it. Might not be even in the field that you're interested in at that point, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
gonna teach you something.
So yeah, so sorry, and on that point, this is really important. Where I struggled is you don't have to do something that you're interested in or passionate about straight away. Just go do something. Where even if you're the mailman in campus, just do something and extrapolate that on your resume when you have to. So yeah,
Yeah, I love that. And again, I think listening to your stories, it sounds pretty similar to mine. So it must mean that there's a lot of people out with a similar story. But I think
yeah,
ultimately, it's you got to constantly evolve and constantly not beat yourself up if things don't go to plan. That's a big thing, I think, too. Like we like to be organized and plan, but plans are meant to change sometimes, and
yeah. Most
I
of the
think
time.
yeah, well, look, I think just quickly, I think when I was in year 10, Alex, I was dreaming of being at Wimbledon, much like you were dreaming of playing in the NBA, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, and as a result, I did very little schoolwork and was lucky enough to even get into college, to be honest, because of my
Mm,
lack of focus academically. But
same.
so I went from school to wanting to be a pro to trying pro before I went to college, which back then the rules allowed temporarily. And then I guess a failed professional foray wasn't quite good enough. I wasn't ready. College, great, develop, and then I left college twice. Wanted to go play
Wow.
professionally again, and found
Wow.
out the hard way that I just wasn't. It just it was a long way off for me, if at all. So then America Take Three was okay. Let's get a degree, and then I actually became a student for the first time. Really focused on that, and then got a business degree. Came back to Australia and decided to be a teacher. Okay, and then loved every minute of all of that, and then started studying Play USA and been doing that ever since. So that's
Mm,
a roller coaster. That's not a direct path to now.
yeah.
That's every bit of that was awesome, challenging at times, but I think that's just resonates with me as well. What you just said, how don't be patient. Things don't always work out, the way you
Yeah.
planned it as well.
But if you like you did, and I think I did as well, if you give it your best and your all with and your all energy with whatever you're doing, the universe somehow finds a way to make things work out for you.
Totally. Yeah. What does they say? The harder you work, the luckier you get, and those types of
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah. Like if you complain about the job you hate, and blah blah blah, and you're just not happy, and, you're not doing something you're passionate about, or I'm a failed athlete, shit, it didn't go the way I wanted to go. If you have that mindset, then you'll attract that type of mindset of people, negativity, blah blah blah. I did. As soon as I switched my mindset to, what, I'm just going to do as best as I can, and I have faith that something of passion or purpose will find me, and it did. So that's a great point.
No, I think Alex, very good point to probably wrap up, mate. And
Yeah,
really been a pleasure chatting. And as I said, I'm pleased there are people like you and your company, athlete to business out there who are here to help our young student athletes as they prepare for their post college journey. So look, it's a very important topic to us, as you can probably tell,
yeah,
and to all parents of athletes and athletes themselves, because I think we all seek that purpose, as you've mentioned, and happiness in any transition we make in life. So, again, thank you, Alex, and for coming on In the Huddle, and we look forward to keeping in touch.
yeah. Definitely. No, thank you for having me on. That was fun. I'm sure we could talk for hours more
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
what you're passionate
We'll share
about. No,
some
yeah,
more college stories next time, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Fun.
For sure.
Trip down memory lane. No,
That's
thanks
it.
again, Alex.
Thank you. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.